The rain had been falling for hours, soft at first, then steadily more relentless, soaking the small town of Maple Glen in a gray, endless drizzle. On the edge of town, past the cracked bridge and the dead oak, stood the old Blackwood House, a sprawling Victorian ruin left to rot after its last owners vanished in the 1970s. The locals said the lights still flickered in its upstairs windows some nights, but nobody ever checked. That is, until one cold October evening, when 4 teenagers decided it would be the perfect place to play hide and seek. Mia was the one who suggested it. She had always loved testing limits, abandoned tunnels, graveyard dares, midnight swims. Her brother Evan protested, saying the place was condemned, but when their friends Jake and Tessa egged him on, his pride won over his fear. They crossed the bridge just before dusk, laughing too loud, the sound bouncing off the trees as if warning them to turn back. The air felt heavy, not just with rain, but with something still and watchful. The house loomed over them like a sleeping beast, its windows' dark eyes peering out from beneath a sagging roof. When they stepped inside, the smell hit first: rot, wet wood, and old wallpaper that peeled in long curling strips. Every step on the warped floorboards echoed through the halls, as if the house was alive and listening. Evan clicked on his flashlight and the beam caught a line of dusty portraits along the stairway, faces faded, but their eyes glinting eerily in the light. Tessa joked nervously that they looked too real, but her voice quivered slightly. They decided to make the game interesting: 1 seeker, 3 hiders, no flashlights allowed once the count began. Whoever got found first had to spend 5 minutes alone in the basement, a punishment they all agreed was terrifying enough. Mia volunteered to be the first seeker. As she turned to face the wall and began counting, the others scattered into the house, their footsteps fading like whispers into the dark. The storm outside grew stronger, wind clawing at the windows as if trying to get in. By the time Mia reached 20, the air had changed. The house no longer sounded empty, it breathed. She could hear faint creaks above her, a door slowly closing down the hall, and something else, a soft tapping sound, rhythmic and deliberate, coming from upstairs. When she whispered, "Ready or not, here I come," her voice felt swallowed by the shadows. She started up the staircase, the beam of her dying flashlight trembling against the walls. At the top of the stairs, one of the old portraits had fallen to the floor, and behind it, faintly scratched into the wallpaper, were the words, "Don't look for them." Mia froze at the top of the stairs, her breath misting in the faint beam of her flashlight. The words, "Don't look for them," looked freshly scratched, not old, not dusty. Her skin prickled. The others must have seen it before hiding, right? Maybe Jake did it to freak her out. She tried to shake it off, forcing a shaky laugh, and called out softly, "Okay, I'm coming for you guys." Her voice echoed down the hallway, bouncing back at her in warped, hollow tones. The upstairs hall was long and uneven, lined with half-open doors that breathed with the draft from the storm outside. Each room she peeked into seemed worse than the last: decayed furniture, tattered curtains that fluttered like pale ghosts, a collapsed ceiling dripping rainwater. In one room, she swore she heard faint breathing. She stepped inside, her flashlight sweeping across a cluster of broken dolls arranged in a circle on the floor. Their glass eyes glinted, and for an instant she thought one of their heads had turned. She blinked, it hadn't. She backed out quickly, her heartbeat pounding in her ears. Down the hall, a door slowly creaked open on its own. Mia stiffened. The sound hadn't come from the wind this time, it was deliberate, slow, like someone wanted her attention. "Jake?" she whispered. No answer. The room was darker than the others, the wallpaper stripped down to raw wood. In the corner sat an old wardrobe, its door slightly ajar. The air was colder here, so cold that her breath came out in thick white puffs. She approached, step by step, her hand trembling on the flashlight. When she yanked the wardrobe door open, a body fell out. Mia screamed, but the sound caught in her throat when she realized it wasn't real. It was a mannequin, ancient and cracked, with human hair stitched crudely to its scalp. Its mouth hung open as if in a silent scream. But what made her skin crawl wasn't the mannequin itself, it was the small shoe prints on the dusty floor around it. Fresh ones. Child-sized. Leading into the far corner of the room, where the shadows pooled thickest. Mia's flashlight flickered, once, twice, then went dead. She was left in pitch darkness. She tried to steady her breathing, whispering, "Okay, okay, it's fine." Then, in the silence, a faint whisper came from the corner. Not from Jake, Evan, or Tessa, but from a child's voice, low and rasping, "Don't look for them, they're already here." The darkness pressed in like a living thing. Mia's heart pounded so hard she could hear it over the rain hammering the roof. She fumbled for her phone, no signal, of course, but the screen's faint glow gave her enough light to see the door. She bolted into the hallway, panting, every nerve screaming for her to leave. But she couldn't. Her friends were still hiding somewhere in this house. Evan. Tessa. Jake, she called, voice trembling. No answer. Only the sound of water dripping, and faint footsteps coming from the hall below. She froze mid-step. The sound wasn't quick or playful like one of her friends. It was slow, dragging. One step. Pause. Another. She crept toward the staircase, phone trembling in her hand, and leaned just far enough to peer down. Lightning flashed through the cracked windows, illuminating the foyer, and there, at the bottom of the stairs, stood someone. Too tall to be Jake. Too still to be alive. For a heartbeat, the shape just watched her, and then, when the thunder crashed, it was gone. Mia stumbled backward, her foot snapping through a soft plank in the floor. She bit down a scream, limping as she retreated into the nearest room. It looked like an old nursery, faded wallpaper with rabbits and moons, a rocking chair, and a wooden toy chest against the wall. She leaned against the door, trying to listen. No footsteps now. Just rain. Just silence. She tried to convince herself she'd imagined it, that it was some trick of the light. But then, the rocking chair began to move. It started slow, a gentle creak, then faster, like invisible hands were pushing it. Mia's phone light caught something etched into the chair's backrest, a name, carved deep and angry, Lucy. She felt a sudden chill, a pressure in the air that made her throat tighten. Then, from inside the toy chest, came a soft thump. Another. Then a whisper. A child's whisper. Found you. The lid of the chest creaked open, inch by inch, and Mia took a step back. A pale hand, small, grayish, reached out from the darkness inside. Mia turned and ran, the door slamming behind her with such force the frame splintered. She didn't stop running until she reached the stairwell again, gasping, her chest on fire. And that's when she heard her name, faint, trembling, from somewhere deep below. It was Evan's voice. Mia, help, basement. Mia's breath came in shallow bursts as she clung to the banister, staring down the staircase that sank into total blackness. Evan's voice had come from below, soft, strained, and echoing like it traveled through a tunnel. Mia, help, it didn't sound quite right. The pitch was off, the rhythm uneven, like someone trying to mimic his tone. She hesitated, torn between fear and duty. Her brother was down there, or at least, something that sounded like him was. The main hallway had changed since she last passed through it. The portraits on the wall looked warped, the faces smeared and twisted, eyes black and hollow. The air smelled of iron and rot. A draft came from beneath a heavy wooden door near the back of the hall, the entrance to the basement. She swallowed hard, gripping the cold brass handle. It was warm. Someone had touched it recently. Slowly, she pulled it open, the hinges crying out like a wounded animal. The staircase beyond descended into a pit of darkness. The smell was stronger here, damp wood, mildew, and something sour, like old blood. She turned on her phone's flashlight again and stepped down carefully. Each plank groaned under her feet. Evan, she whispered. I'm coming, okay? Say something. But there was no answer now. Just that heavy, pulsing silence. Halfway down, she noticed a faint sound, a drip, steady, rhythmic. She reached the bottom and the beam of her light caught the source, a puddle of water collecting beneath an old sink. Relief washed over her for a second, until the beam shifted. There, slumped against the far wall, was Jake. His eyes were open, but glassy, his mouth slightly parted as if caught mid-breath. He was pale, unnaturally so, his hand still clutching his phone. Mia rushed over, shaking him. Jake! Wake up! But the body didn't move. The skin was cold. Then she saw something else, faint scratches on the floor next to him. Words, carved desperately into the wood, she's not alone. Before she could process it, the phone in Jake's hand flickered on. The screen glowed faintly, showing the camera app, and a still image frozen from moments earlier. It was the basement stairs. And standing halfway down them, barely visible in the grainy darkness, was a little girl. Her head tilted. Her mouth stretched in a too-wide smile. And just as Mia realized the image wasn't frozen anymore, the girl blinked, the phone fell from Mia's hand as something creaked behind her. She turned slowly, the flashlight trembling in her grip. At the top of the basement stairs stood the same small figure from the photo, soaked, barefoot, her hair plastered to her face. She was smiling. It's your turn to hide, the girl whispered, her voice echoing through the cellar like wind through a grave. Mia stumbled backward, her light shaking wildly as the small figure on the stairs tilted its head farther, an unnatural, almost boneless motion. It's your turn to hide, the child repeated, but her lips didn't move this time. The voice came from somewhere deeper, beneath the floorboards, behind the walls, as if the whole house was whispering in unison. Mia bolted past Jake's body, slamming into the back corner of the basement, searching for another way out. Her phone screen cracked when she dropped it, leaving her in a trembling cone of light surrounded by shadows that seemed to breathe. She found a narrow crawlspace behind a stack of old crates. The opening was small, lined with cobwebs, but it led upward at a steep angle, maybe toward the cellar door on the outside. As she crawled in, splinters tore at her palms and her knees scraped raw. Behind her, the sound of tiny feet padded down the stairs. "You're doing it wrong," the voice cooed. "You have to count first." Then came a low humming, the tune of a lullaby, soft and cracked, echoing closer and closer. Mia crawled faster, heart thundering, until her hand brushed something smooth, glass. Her light caught a small window in the dirt wall. On the other side, she saw movement. Not her friends, no. Children. Dozens of them. Their faces pale and empty, their eyes black pits. They were standing in the rain outside the house, lined up like dolls, watching her. The window fogged from their collective breath, forming a faint message traced in the condensation, "We're still hiding." She screamed and scrambled back down the tunnel, her mind unraveling. She burst out of the crawlspace into a narrow corridor she hadn't seen before. The walls were lined with old photographs, families, children, smiling, but their faces were scratched out, every one. The deeper she went, the colder it grew, until she could see her breath again. And then she noticed something carved into the wood above a door at the corridor's end, the ones who played before. Inside that room were three things: a child's bed, a broken lantern, and a row of small bones laid neatly in a circle on the floor. Each one had a name tag tied to it: Eli, Nora, Lucy. The last tag was blank. As she stared, the door slammed behind her. The lantern flickered to life on its own, bathing the room in dull amber light. And from beneath the bed, a voice whispered, "Tag, you're it." Mia's scream caught in her throat as the whisper came from beneath the bed. She stumbled back, her hand brushing the circle of tiny bones. The lantern flickered violently, shadows spinning along the walls until they seemed to move on their own, stretching, writhing, becoming shapes. Children's laughter filled the air, high-pitched and hollow, echoing from nowhere and everywhere at once. Then came the counting, one voice, then several, whispering together, 1, 2, 3, the house was counting. Her mind was unraveling, but instinct took over. She lunged for the door, slamming her shoulder against it until the old latch splintered. The corridor beyond was shifting, the walls bending inward like the house was breathing. She ran, past the twisted portraits, the crawlspace, the basement stairs, until she reached the foyer. Lightning flashed through the cracked window, illuminating the front door just a few feet away. She grabbed the knob and pulled. It didn't move. The entire frame pulsed with a dull red glow, like heat under the paint. The whispering behind her grew louder. "Don't leave yet," a child's voice said, right beside her ear. Mia spun, screaming, and saw them. The children. Dozens of them. Their forms flickering like candle flames, clothes from another century, eyes black and bottomless. At their center stood the girl she'd seen in the photo, Lucy. Her smile was wider now, splitting unnaturally across her cheeks. "You didn't play right," she said softly. "You looked for them when you should have hidden." Her hand reached out, impossibly long and thin, touching Mia's chest. The air went cold, memories crashed through Mia's mind, flashes of other nights, other kids, all daring each other to play in the Blackwood House. Each game ending the same way. Each loser staying behind. That's what the bones were. Not trophies. Players. The children didn't haunt the house made them. Each round of hide and seek fed it. And now, it was her turn. Mia's flashlight dropped from her hand, its beam rolling across the floor to reveal faint, ghostly footprints circling her. She tried to scream again, but no sound came out. The lantern light dimmed to a dying glow. Lucy tilted her head, whispering one last rule: if you're found, you stay. Then everything went dark. By morning, the rain had stopped. The old Blackwood house stood quiet once more, its windows dark and still. But when a passing hiker crossed the bridge later that day, they swore they saw a light in the upstairs window, and the faint silhouette of a girl, her hand pressed against the glass, as if waiting for someone new to come play.